Our next speaker is somebody who has many qualities, and one of his great qualities is that once you think you can grasp something, he will ask a question and you will realize that you need to reach beyond. He's been a member of the ULT for more than 30 years, both in New York and in Los Angeles. He was with ITC from its very early days, doing many presentations already, and he's also its current president. His name is Jennings.
Thank you. Thanks. Good afternoon. And let me say thank you. And thank you, because now really there's nothing I have to say. And the good thing about that is, again, it's a testament to what ITC is trying to demonstrate, that when it comes to looking at the essence of a teaching that was presented by Madame Blavatsky, when we're dealing with the root, there's not much difference in what we see or what we say. And so, again, thank you for demonstrating that in a way that is just very vital in living. I had to leave my folder there because you said what I wrote, and so I can't say it as well as you. So I sat in the last 10 minutes trying to figure out how I can say something that means anything at all that hasn't been said this morning. So here we go. I guess let me then start. I may as well make this a little bit playful and a little bit fun. Can we have that blackness, please? I can't see it. That looks like whiteness. Is that blackness? Okay, all righty. Use your imagination. This screen, actually this part of it, is the presentation. That is it. There is nothing, well, not unknown. Nothing to be said, but to realize that thou art. End of story. Now, let me start. As a student of ULT, again, as was said by West and so many of the others that stepped up on the stage, there's nothing that I can say that is representative per se of all of ULT. But we are encouraged to be individual students engaging in individual study, and then to pool that with sharing, very similar to what we're doing here. So, the essence of her timeless message, if we look to play with that, is something that, again, can't really be spoken of because the essence is beyond words. And the message, the best that we can get out of it, oh please, time for me, you know, like halfway, is basically what she presented in The Secret Doctrine, in Isis Unveiled, in the Key to Theosophy, in The Voice of the Silence, etc. So, having said that, the challenge is to appreciate some of that without getting lost. In a nutshell, then, we can say that the workable part of that message is brotherhood, right there, or there. And as she said in the proem, if you can't understand this, then you've got that. Think about it. I mean, in the proem she said, in the beginning, that darkness is her three words: void, non-ego, and what was the other one? Void, non-ego, and darkness. That's it. Now, some people might be afraid of that, but that is an extremely liberating reality if you move past many of the misconceptions that we live with. That and that, if you can't get one, then you can get two. Because now we're in duality, we're in contrast, and now we talk about other. if we talk about other, because we misperceive that other is us, one, unity that was spoken about, now we have to have compassion. Because we're looking outside of ourselves, which is one self, one reality, one truth, one darkness, one non-ego, one voidness that gives rise to the appearance of phenomena that we misidentify ourselves with and believe, and we believe it so much that we die for it, that we are here. Just like when we go to sleep and have a dream, we believe, and we die for it when the dream is over, that we're there. As opposed to letting go and dying for it now and experiencing it now. So, brotherhood, unity, compassion, altruistic service. What's the service for? If we're thinking of other, and we are moving beyond ourselves because we realize there is no self per se that we have to cling to, then we are obligated, out of compassion, out of duty, that which is due to humanity, to serve. And that service is, in reality, we know, serving non-self as self through other. But what do the teachers tell us in the secret doctrine that other is? Other is simply that, clothed with karmic skandhas, that give the appearance of other when there is only one truth, one reality. The catechism that they speak about, how many truths are there when we're looking at space and being and law? The appearance is more than one. The truth is only one. So truly universal brotherhood has to be, if we're looking in time and space, the ultimate duty. If we understand this, it is mandatory that we live that kind of a life. That, in some respects, is a weird way, but nonetheless, the way she presents of essence and the essence of her teaching. Now, again, if we can't do that kind of a thing, then the essence of the teaching, which is her message, is, again, as has been explained, in the SD, in the voice, in Isis Unveiled. But then we have to ask, as was said again, these things are so vast in terms of the information that's there. How do we simplify it? And she does that for us in the proem, if we're going to deal with the SD. And she gives us a summary. And she says the first stanza has to do with the absolute in the state of pralaya, which is a little redundant and misrepresented. Because she then tells us later that the absolute is, in essence, the ground out of which both Manvantara and Pralaya arise. So again, she's presenting opposites for us when in fact there's a reality, but directing us to that underlying reality as a unity, which is again the basis for brotherhood, the basis for love, the basis for compassion. She says the second stanza has to do with something that is so close to the first that she's got to leave it to the intuition of the student to perceive. And yet if we look at her messages throughout the secret doctrine, we understand that there has to be preparation. And the preparation takes part in stanza 2. And the preparation is for stanza 3, which she says is simply the emergence of the monad. The one life, or the dot in the middle of the circle that is white on the basis of the darkness that is black. And she says that monad, representing, again, all of manifest life, is in time and space that one life. But she says the next stage of that is the energizing, the awakening, the vibrational resonance of the germ of the monad. And it's that germ or seed, as it begins to expand, that gives rise to every series of sevens that she has presented to us. From the Dhyan Chohans, to the planes of existence, to the states of consciousness, to as mundane as the continents, to the sevenfold nature of the earth, to our principles, everywhere you look. And then she says, as that germ begins to expand and those Dhyani Chohans begin to become active in time and space, we're moving into the formation of the substance that now gives rise to the material that is the basis for form. And that's where we begin to misidentify, because we've forgotten everything that happened before. And from that form, she at that time related that particular application to the nebulous period, wherein the solar systems, the galaxies, etc. began to form. And then she says that brings us down to global formation. And from global formation, she began to speak about life up to this fourth round. Now, the wonderful thing about that part of the message is that is us. If this is us and this is us, that is us. What does that mean? That means that what she tells us is the paradigm or the image, the law, and the entire unfolding is the very essence of our nature. Those three things are one thing, and that one thing embraces a living image of everything. And for those that are familiar with the Gita, when Arjuna had Krishna show that image, it was an image that he couldn't really integrate. And so he said, enough, 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 put it back. But the wonderful thing is that image is within us. And that image becomes available to us at a certain point of time for the process of further study and contemplation. That is nature. Now, she also tells us in a later portion about 7 creations. And why am I bothering you with this? Because we can talk about core, which we're going to do in a minute, which is simply, as was beautifully expressed by both speakers, the 3 fundamentals. But then we have to realize that we are the 3 fundamentals. The 3 fundamentals are those 3 monadic streams that she talks about in the SD, the spiritual, the monastic, and the physical, as it relates to evolution, law, cycles, reincarnation, and the manifest absolute resting on the unmanifest boundless absolute. That is the upside-down pyramid of our being, and the challenge is, with her message, to go from the point to the base, upside down, the Ashwata tree that was spoken about. So her message is very, very vast, and yet at the same time it's very, very simple. Excuse me for saying that, I apologize. But it's simple because of the information that she has given us. We can look at it numerically and say it's all summed up in 0 to 10. We can look at it symbolically, because the entire doctrine, if we ask what is the core, 3 fundamentals, which are 1 fundamental, resting on an absolute truth, which is no different in any of us. Those numbers 0 through 10, she explains to us, truly give us keys to generate process. And so that process has to do with how do we transform mind, not to put stuff into it, but to allow mind to resonate with truth in a way that goes beyond personality. And so again, core, seed, beautifully expressed in the three fundamentals, which, again, I don't need to refer to again. And then the question is, how do we grasp this totality? How do we put it together? And really, to ask the question how to grasp implies that we are outside of what we are trying to embrace, when the truth of the matter is the reverse. That we are within, looking without, and the question is not about grasping something external to ourselves, but awakening to something deeply embedded within ourselves. And so, in ULT, what do we use to try, if we dare, to initiate that process? And those are the texts already that have been mentioned: the Voice of the Silence, the Bhagavad Gita, the Dhammapada, and Patanjali's Yoga Aphorisms. Preferably, I like PYA, Patanjali, because the systematic study of Patanjali shows you where the secret doctrine came from. It shows you where the information from ISIS came from. It links you directly to that great initiator that was spoken about earlier today, designated watcher in 2 of the presentations. And also, how can we put this, links you more vitally to a recognition of those Dhyan Chohans, and to the entire lineage that has been explained to us by HPB. So, belief, conviction, faith, what do we do? This is the one I press, I think. B? Where to go? Oh, I should push it now?
It's your animation.
Yeah, well, you know, that was last year. Well, okay, that's the way to grasp. Burn it up. Burn it up. When you burn up your skandhas, there's nothing left, and then you've got a nice image. And again, this is just a little summation of process in Patanjali's Yoga Aphorisms that is consistent with the Voice of the Silence, that is consistent with the Secret Doctrine, that is consistent with Isis Unveiled, that is consistent with a recognition of our lineage, which is consistent with a recognition of a path that can be followed if we are able to do that. And in a nutshell, everything from here, and you guys must be familiar with Madame Blavatsky's diagrams on page 200 SG. Yes, where the triangle is sitting up at the top, and then you've got the 4 planes on the bottom, and she talks about the archetypal, the creative, the formative, and the substantial. And so when we're looking at the 4 lower planes, and we're trying to look at where we are, and we're understanding, as she says in her article, 7 Creations, Secret Doctrine, book, I think it's the 3rd part of book 1. She explains how, on the first level, there is just pure force, which is the force arising from our true nature. On the second level, how that force generates that whole range of mind and what that is about, and how the idea, which is not a reality, but the idea of ego, I, me, mind, I am this as opposed to that, arises. And then she tells us how this level of what she calls the tamatras, and there are different levels of that, which would be a lower level of prakriti in some respects, is the level at which the elementals arise that are intellectual in nature, and this is very interesting, as well as physical in nature, and how those elementals then coalesce to generate what we typically call skandhas, to create forms on that formative level through which the light of our true nature works. The difficulty, again, is the levels of obscuration that occur, And so when we're looking at those texts such as Patanjali's, and we're actually trying to, as the teacher said, live the life to know the doctrine. Simple. That is it. That thou art, live the life. But living the life really means untying the knot of everything that you thought you were and still think you are, which is extremely difficult at this point because most folks, not even knowing that they are any longer a self, just feel like dying because of what's been let go of because they're still linked with some of this below. And yet, Patanjali explains, if we're looking at a process, as well as the SD, if you read it in the very same way, in terms of the stanzas, the explanation of the stanzas, and especially Book 2, in terms of the incarnation and the lighting up of manas going in reverse. It is the ultimate yoga. She explains that involution process and the evolutionary process where consciousness is able to strip off everything that is adventitious or external to its true self, yet maintaining spiritual knowledge. And the maintaining of that spiritual knowledge is because the very image of truth, as Krishna indicated and demonstrated, is inherent within our nature. The very law of nature is inherent within our nature. We are, again, those three fundamental propositions in time and space. Outside of time and space, we are that one life. So from a ULT perspective, this individual student takes those same ideas because we're not talking about anything different. It is compassion, it is one life, it is law, it is altruistic service. It is wisdom. And we look at it in terms of making it real, making it a living power in our life, because the sun is the sun. Just because a ray of that sun is in that body and that body and that body doesn't mean it's not the sun. And just because the covering of the ray is unable to reflect the light of the sun, which she speaks about in the SD as well, that doesn't mean that it's still not the ray, and that it's still not inherently perfectible. Not the ray, because it is what it is, but the matter that it uses. And that's perhaps, from a ULT perspective, our job, lifting up the life that we use in a compassionate way, both within and without. And again, so the essence of all of the wisdom of her teaching, if we're doing it in life, is living the life, is about compassion, universal brotherhood, is about service, and done. I have 5 minutes?
You can stop early.
Okay, then okay, so let me say, done, done, done. That's what it is. If we can't get that, then we can do this. Done.
All right, wonderful. So now we have time for questions. So can I ask the three speakers to please take a seat on the stage?